What did Russian dissident Alexei Navalny think when he learned that the hit squad sent to kill him had used poison?
What the f***? Come on, poisoned? I don't believe it. Putin's supposed to be not so stupid to use this Novichok. If you want to kill someone, just shoot him. Jesus Christ.
These scenes are from the Oscar-nominated documentary Navalny by Daniel Roher, who embedded with Navalny and his team for months as they uncovered an assassination plot that reached the highest levels of the Kremlin. I recently spoke with Roher about how Navalny got made, the geopolitical power of cinema, and what he hopes Vladimir Putin will do if he sees the film. Daniel Roher, director of the now Academy-nominated documentary Navalny. Congratulations, first of all, on that.
Thank you.
Let's start with the end. You are about to go to Los Angeles for the Oscars. Where is Alexei Navalny right now?
Right now, Alexei Navalny is in a small prison cell, solitary confinement, about 6.5 hours outside of Moscow. He has, for much of the last 6 months, been removed from the general prison population, so he is in specifically solitary confinement. So Navalny is not doing well, and it's really our principal responsibility to keep his name in the global consciousness and use the film as a vehicle to keep him in the world's eye.
How does a talented young filmmaker from Canada end up making a documentary about the most prominent dissident in the world? How did this start?
So often making documentaries is the art of being in the right place at the right time, and I think this film really embodies that. I was working on a film project in Ukraine, actually, and I was with Christo Grozdev, who features prominently in the Navalny film. That film wasn't going well, and it was around the same time that Christo started working on the Navalny case, seeing if he could find any information that would be useful in uncovering essentially the plot. And I think to even his own shock, he started uncovering information pretty quickly. Within a few days, he was ready to approach Navalny and say, I have some information I'd like to share with you. What do you think about doing a film project? And Navalny was receptive to that idea, and we had the opportunity to travel across Austria, sneak across the German border, which was closed for COVID, and meet Alexei in the Black Forest.
How do you pitch a guy? I mean, he's already got tens of millions of followers on social media. He's a media master himself. Why does he need a documentary film made about him?
A YouTube video is made and released, and it exists and is gone and forgotten in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. This film is can be a weapon for you that's on a time delay. If you tell this story right, people will watch this film and think about Navalny and his family not for the next day or week, but for the rest of their lives. And that's the power of cinema, and that's the difference of cinema. It has an emotional resonance that a YouTube video often would never have.
He's so adept at controlling messages, such an adept communicator. Yeah. Were you ever worried as a filmmaker that maybe you were getting spun or used by Navalny's team?
It wasn't that I was worried about it, I was aware of it. And I think because of his media acumen and his media savviness, he understood the value of what I was trying to bring to the table. And it took a great deal of trust, because one thing we were very clear on from the very, very first meeting is that Team Navalny would have no editorial control.
You've said elsewhere that the experience of watching the film is a lot like what the experience of making the film was like. What did you mean by that?
Well, so often people describe to me what it's like to see the phone call sequence, for example, for the first time.
Это Навальный, Алексей, вас беспокоит. Хотел узнать, зачем вы хотели меня убить.
Oh my God, you ruined their day.
The phone call sequence where Navalny tricks one of his would-be assassins into essentially admitting that they tried to kill him, right?
Precisely. And to be in the room for that moment was just jaw-dropping. You know, I understood, even though I don't speak a word of Russian, I was on one of the cameras. I understood immediately that what we were filming was the most important thing I would ever film. You could read the expressions and emotions on people's faces and just intuit that this was crazy.
The West has a tendency sometimes to deify dissident figures in authoritarian regimes. Sure. And sometimes we find out that they're imperfect heroes. How well do you think we know Alexei Navalny and what he really thinks?
Well, it's very well documented that in Navalny's, in the late aughts and early 2010s, Navalny we see it in the film, him going to this rally, the Russian March rally, which is a rally for Russian nationalists and really unsavory, bad characters. I describe them in the film as Sieg Heilers and Nazi sympathizers and people like this, like really scary. And I asked him about this, and he said, basically, like, you think I want to associate with these guys? I'm trying to build a broad-based coalition. I'm trying to take essentially like the liberals in Moscow and whoever else opposes the regime. If these nationalist guys oppose Putin, then we're on the same team right now. When it comes to figuring out the public policy of how to govern a free Russia, that's a different discussion, and I would never associate with these guys. It's basically the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's the political calculus he's making. And I can simultaneously understand it and be deeply uncomfortable by it.
If Vladimir Putin watches this film, what would you want him to take away from it?
My top of my wish list would be to have him end this brutal genocidal campaign and to take a dose of his own Novichok, do the world a favor.
You've just told this incredible story about him. How does Alexei Navalny's story end, do you think?
I think that Navalny has a life sentence. It's just a question of whose life it is, his or Putin's. For millions and millions of Russians, he's a very important, influential figure. But for probably even more Russians, they view him as a bad person, as a criminal, as all of these things that the propaganda shows talk about. I hope he survives. I hope he's reunited with his family. And one of my personal dreams is to be able to travel to Moscow one day and show him the film.
Daniel Roher, director of the Academy Award-nominated documentary Navalny, thank you so much for stopping by. Good luck at the Oscars.
Thank you.